So I want to share with you a book that I've read in the past. I'm looking through it again, though, called Waiting for God by Simone Weil. She is an independent saint from the early 1900s. She saw herself as living outside of religion in solidarity with those who had no religion. And yet she lived an incredibly spiritual life from a very interesting perspective. I encourage you to take a look at the book if you want a different way of thinking about things, especially service. It's quite wonderful. Anyway, one of the things that she writes about is the three different domains that we have to deal with as people and how to deal with them. So I thought I would just share those ideas here rather concisely for what they are. She says we have to distinguish among three domains. First, that which is absolutely independent of us. It includes all the accomplished facts in the whole universe at the moment and everything that is happening or going to happen later beyond our reach. In this domain, everything that comes about is in accordance with the will of God. So she says this first domain, it's the domain that has nothing to do with us, completely outside of our control, outside of our ability to act or to change. She said that domain we call the absolute will of God, that is the background of isness. And she says because of that, here, then, we must love absolutely everything as a whole and in each detail, including evil in all its forms, notably our own past sins insofar as they are past, for we must hate them insofar as their root is still present, our own sufferings, past, present, and to come, and what is by far the most difficult, the sufferings of other men insofar as we are not called upon to relieve them. So wow, that's an intense teaching right there, that in this domain which is completely out of our control or purveyance, because that exists as the substrate to the moment as the will of God, that everything there has to be embraced as God. You know, even all of our implied suffering and the suffering of humanity, and that we have to find a reservation inside to open to love even in that regard, that deep sense of trust, which is a component of that surrender that we're talking about to the divine ideal. She says the second domain is that which is placed under the rule of the will. It includes the things that are purely natural, close, easily recognized by the intelligence and the imagination, and among which we can make our choice, arranging them from outside so as to provide means to fixed and finite ends. In this domain, and now she's going to tell us everything that is under the purveyance of our will, anything that we can control or affect with our will, this is how we should live in that domain. In this domain, we have to carry out, without faltering or delay, everything that appears clearly to be a duty. When any duty does not appear clearly, we have sometimes to observe more or less arbitrarily established rules and sometimes to follow our inclination, but in a limited degree. Now here she says something very interesting to me. It's kind of outside of the point, but we'll get back to that in a moment. For one of the most dangerous forms of sin, or perhaps the most dangerous, consists of introducing what is unlimited into a domain that is essentially finite. So she's saying in this domain of things that are under our will, that we should absolutely do those things that we are responsible for and that are a duty for us to do. And anything that is outside of our clear understanding of it, we need to study up and kind of hear that voice inside, hear that movement to act on it. And she said, though, about our own inclination to limit that. And she makes that very interesting point. The worst kind of sin is when you release what is unlimited into something that is rather finite. And that's an interesting way of talking about things like lust or greed or anger. These things that really have a burning capacity to them to go and consume everything. To release them into the finite ruins everything. I thought that was a fantastic imagery that she presented there. A really interesting idea. And the third domain is that of the things which, without being under the empire of will, without being related to natural duties, are yet not entirely independent of us. In this domain, we experience the compulsion of God's pressure on conditions that we deserve to experience it, and exactly to the extent that we deserve to do so. So she's talking about a very subtle level of surrender here, to where you can feel the pressure of the divine will within you, that voice of the beloved, that part of the image of the divine from which you emanate, that love, existence, intelligence, absolute. So she says that God rewards the soul that thinks of him with attention and love, and rewards it by exercising a compulsion upon it strictly and mathematically proportionate to this attention and this love. So to the degree that you're paying attention to the beloved and engaging in love with the beloved, to that degree things change, things move, things align within you. You can make progress in spiritual life. We have to abandon ourselves to that pressure, to that movement of God, to that slight whisper of the voice of the divine from within. Abandon ourselves to it, completely give ourselves over to this. To run to the exact spot whither it impels us, and not to go one step farther. So she's careful there. She's saying an absolute obedience, to make no assumptions and no presumptions. To be exactly where the divine will would have you be, and want nothing more and nothing less. An absolute resignation, abandonment. She says in the next paragraph, in a way that I thought was rather interesting, she said, to think of myself is not my job. My job is to think of God, and his job is to take care of me. And I thought, what a wonderful ideal, to be given over completely to the ideal of love in such a way, and to know the nature of the universe, and to trust the things beyond your reach as being of the divine, to the point that you can embrace them and accept them as perfect. And then within your own will, to be completely resigned to what is your duty, what is your responsibility, what is the right thing to do. And then even closer with the world of things and objects, the action in this world in general, to be so absolutely silent within that the slightest nudging of love, the slightest nudging of that inherent intelligence, the creator, the whisper of the divine, the voice of God, as it were, however light, that we're actuated by that alone, and only to the degree that we hear it and understand it. So Simone Weil, Waiting for God, wonderful book. Take a look and see what you think.